And welcome participants. So it's a very timely and quite an interesting event, and it's always good to interact with all of you. I will like to spend some of my time talking to some use cases from the India and from the other perspective. I basically specialize in the application of data and emerging technologies in the public sectors. So that is what my current specialization is, mostly around data science and artificial intelligence and how they are helping in the governance and policy making in across different sectors. That is what I work on primarily. I would like to keep some time towards the end because see, I will be talking to you about some applications during my sessions, which will be a very small spectrum of all the applications that you possibly are experiencing today in your day-to-day life. So it will be really nice to hear your perspective towards the end on what you think you can relate to, and if you think that there is something related and you can also expand it in your domain or in your area of expertise, that will be very interesting to hear about. So without any further delay, I will start the session by sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see. So all of you can see my screen. Thumbs up. Okay. Good. So let me know if anyone cannot see my screen. Accordingly, I will stop and take your questions. So let me give you a bit about my journey with the policy world. So I have spent about good 20 years of my career working on how data-led technologies, like whether it's data science, artificial intelligence, or data analytics, have been used in the business domain. So a large part of that of my career I have spent on doing that across domains like retail, manufacturing, telecom, and things of that nature. Over the last 6-7 years, I have focused on the public sector. This was by chance when I was working in Accenture Consulting and in IBM that I got into some of these projects in this area. And since then, I have seen this is a huge and quite an interesting space, and I continue to work in the public sector. Prior to Indian School of Business, I was heading the data analytics cell at the Indian policy think tank, Niti Aayog, if some of you have heard about it, where I got a chance to work on how data and emerging technologies can play a pivotal role in improving governance and policy making. So in today's talk, I will be talking to you about the role of emerging digital technologies. Again, when I use the term emerging digital technologies, the spectrum is really, really huge. And if I just tell you about the emerging digital technologies that we consider there is data science, which is my area of expertise. There is big data, there is artificial intelligence, then there is blockchain, and that is what we'll cover today. There are aspects of virtual reality, augmented reality, which is playing a big role. There, 3D printing and a range of other digital technologies are also there, which for the time constraints we cannot cover today. But if you have any questions on those areas, we will be happy to consider and take. We'll be talking about three broad areas. The first one is data, evidence, and real-time monitoring. When we talk about corruption, fraud, and those aspects, we see the role of data, evidence-based policymaking, and what this can do to you when you're looking into various aspects. So that is the first broad area that we talk about. Again, mostly based on examples from the Indian perspective. The second is my area, which I work upon the most, is the area of big data and artificial intelligence. And then recently we have also started working on the area of blockchain, which has a lot of opportunities in the public sector in India. And we'll talk about some of the use cases in those areas. So these are the three broad areas that we'll talk about and we'll discuss today. So the first one is data, evidence, and real-time monitoring. So if I see this is a very broad area. So you're looking at evidence, what evidence is there for a particular policy, and then the aspect of real-time monitoring. What is real-time monitoring, if we say? So if I will like to draw your attention towards the policy making process in general. So the policy making process, if you look into, and I know we are looking into corruption as one of the aspects, but let us look into the policy making process and you will understand why I'm talking from that perspective. We say identify a problem. So it can be a problem of, say, there's a traffic problem in a particular area, or there is a crime problem in a particular area. And so that is where you start by identification of a problem. Then there is discussion on that problem by, say, think tank, researchers, and policy groups and practitioners about how you can possibly solve that problem. And it can be some problem or the other. And then the policy formation takes place, where, say, you come up with some white paper or some thought paper or approach document. In the company's case, it can be a strategy document that will talk about how the policy is formed. So that's the third phase. The next is the policy acceptance, because, say, you might come up with a policy or a strategy to do something, but then your CEO might want to like it and has to approve it. In the case of a government, we have fixed structures, but it is passed in the parliament and it becomes a law or a bill. And often we see a lot of policies and decisions which wait for a long time before they actually become, before they get accepted. So that cycle is pretty long. There is provisioning of means, where we basically allocate some money onto that policy to implement it, for the purpose of implementation. Then comes the selection of vendor, and then comes the implementation. And after the policy's implementation, then you go and evaluate, okay, so people had actually thought about this problem, about, say, crime in a particular area, or, say, a traffic problem in a particular juncture, and how this has been solved now. So often what happens, this whole cycle takes a very, very long time. And in my experience, there are policies which often take, say, 5 to 10 years from the time you identify a policy to, say, it has been evaluated properly. And there are a lot of the ones. Say we try to do a lot of health measures. We try to take a lot of education measures in the country, and we only come to find about it, what is the status, maybe in 15 years time or 10 years time the evaluation happens. So what happens because of that, because of this big time frame, is that the people who are in charge of delivering that service, they become quite slack in their attitude. Say if there are doctors who are in charge of the health of the patients, or, say, there are teachers who are in charge of the education outcomes of the students, they become very slack because they are not being measured on a regular basis. Their evaluation would possibly happen in 15 years. So a teacher knows that I will possibly retire by then. So even if I don't perform for this last 10 years, nothing is going to matter in the long run, because I can easily escape that evaluation path. So what has come up is that a more continuous evaluation in every phase of the process that will help you take quick decisions and corrective actions. This is a theoretical framework that you will understand. How can we take this into practice? So as I was telling you, I was working in the central policy think tank of the country, and there we had the similar problem for India. The learning outcomes for education of the kids for say the government schools or the public schools were been measured in a very, very long time period, or they were not been measured at all. So So there was no measurement or evidence or data to support how they were performing. The second was the status of health in the country. So how could you basically measure these aspects on a more frequent basis? So if you let me take the example of health. The status of health in India, there was one survey which was done in 2003 and 4, and there was another survey that was done in 2015 and 16. We call them the National Family and Health Survey. There's a new version which has been released now. But usually what happened in the past was that these surveys would be done at the gap of almost 10 years. So if there was a doctor or a medical officer who is in charge of a particular district or state, that medical officer can have a very slack attitude towards work, and which can lead to the failure of a lot of the services, because the person knows that he or she is not going to be measured in real time. So what has happened was that now, moving from say an evaluation of every 10 years, now these evaluations were taking place on a yearly basis, and there is fixing of responsibility on particular indicators that were done, that were been measured. So this was done for health, this was done for education. Education is an important aspect, and it was done for education to see how education outcomes were improving and the school education level was improving on a year-on-year basis. So moving from say a 10-year evaluation, moving the evaluation cycle to say every yearly. Not only that, water. India is a water scarce nation, and we are heavily dependent on agriculture. Water is also required for the urban cities and industries and other things. So it's not about measuring how much water each of the states has, but it's about measuring how well they're managing their water. So what I mean by that is that, say there is one state through which a particular river flows, maybe one of our major rivers, the Ganga, flows through that state. So that state might have 1,000 units of water, whereas another state might have only 100 units of water. So we cannot measure them as apple to apple comparison. What we have to measure them as is that if you have 1,000 units and another one is 100 units, how are you ensuring there are proper processes in place so that these are made equitable to everyone? So ensuring that irrigation is in place, irrigation processes are in place, so that the water of irrigation reaches the last farm over there. Ensuring that there is drinking water connection and pipe connection in every corner. So those are some of the administrative aspects that we're seeing, because we are talking of corruption, and corruption often happens because people are not doing their own work and they are slack in their services. To ensure that they are on their toes always, they have been measured every year, and this is a report that we are coming. Again, a lot of those other things like the Sustainable Development Goal. On all the 16 Sustainable Development Goals, the country in itself, India, is measured, and like many other countries, on what they have achieved. But the country can only achieve if each of the states achieve in also along with it. So how each of the states are doing on each of the Sustainable Development Goal is what the SDG index talks about. So there's the indexing of the states that we talk about here. Innovation, again, we have the Global Innovation Index on which the different countries are measured. This is done by the Cornell University and WIPO and a few other players. Innovation is a very important aspect to remain competitive in the economy, because it gives you various aspects. Are all aspects, are the industries performing well, the industry associations? Are the industry clusters functioning well? And a range of other things that has to be evaluated to look at the innovation, the study, the higher education system. How is it performing? So the innovation ecosystem ranks the states on how they are doing. Ease of doing business is very important, because that basically measures how different states are performing in granting permits for doing business. And the ease of doing business index basically measures that. So these are all indexes which are at the state level, the top blue ones we see. But often we see in India that there are particular states which are performing at a sort of okayish rate or at an average rate, but we see there are particular districts in those states, means the counties in those states, which are basically lagging behind. So what can be done for those things? So what was done was that we took upon a few important aspects. One was the district hospitals. District hospitals are the major centers responsible for the health care delivery in that district. So measurement of the district hospitals was a very important aspect, and all the district hospitals in the country, about 720 district hospitals, were evaluated and measured on a yearly basis. And this is less to do with the with whether your doctor is good versus this doctor is bad. It is more to do with, say, operational issues and how quickly they are responding to operational issues. So if there is a shortage of medicine, did the shortage of medicine in a particular district hospital stay before they made the requisition? How long was the delay between the first shortage and when the medicine was ordered? Was it 1 day versus was it 1 month? So that will measure. If there was an oxygen cylinder that went empty in a particular hospital, was the oxygen cylinder replenished or refilled in a week's time, or did it take a few months to refill the oxygen cylinder? So these are some of the operational issues that were measured, and these are all data that are tracked on a healthcare system. It was quite straightforward to measure them and to rank the proactiveness and the operational and admin readiness of these hospitals in delivering the services. That also ensured that if these are functioning well, that means the officials who are working there are performing their duty well. Municipal and civic bodies, which are very actually in charge of delivering the services to the states, to the cities and the urban bodies, how they are doing in their various aspects. So that was the next one. And the ease of living. Ease of living is a very interesting aspect. So we looked at the various aspects that are there for easy living in a particular area, and these aspects were taken into account and formed an index. So this is also what we actually did into the aspirational districts. So these are all measures that we are measuring at a yearly basis. But then to increase the rate at which the evaluation was taking place, this organization Niti Aayog went a step further and basically started measuring some of the districts. We call them aspirational districts. So there are about 720 counties or districts in the country. All of them were measured across 5 different pillars, as you can see that: health and nutrition, education, agriculture and water resources, financial inclusion and skill development, and basic infrastructure. And they were measured on a month-by-month basis, and what their position in a particular month is put there in the public domain. So this is a live website from which I've taken a picture for a particular month of January 2019. So the website is championsofchange.org, where you can go and see what is the status of a particular district on that particular month and how it has performed over the last time period. So this is what is happening there. So you can see measuring something at a rate of, say, every 10 to 15 years, to measuring that district and various aspects, all infrastructure and administrative aspect of the district on sort of monthly basis, will keep the officers on their toes and also ensure that they are not getting into a slack behavior or getting into corrupt practices. So these are some of the measures that are being taken there to ensure that real-time data collection happens. Again, putting data on a dashboard, this was something that came up only in 2018, is not new in India. This concept have been tried earlier in the past, and we have something which is called as the Chief Minister's Dashboard. This was started by this person, one of the ministers in the state. He is no more the minister there, but since he launched this idea first, where various aspects of the state are monitored and put on the public domain. So you might be thinking, what is the relationship between a dashboard, putting data in the public domain, and corruption? So the way the Indian government thought about these things was that if you can collect data in real time about a lot of these aspects, and this was data that was being collected on a daily basis. All this data, if you see today, if you just type CM dashboard Andhra Pradesh, this is for that state, you can actually see this dashboard live. You can actually see what happened yesterday, what is happening today. So the first aspect is increasing the transparency. Once you increase transparency, there are more citizens. Citizens are aware of it. Journalists are getting access to the data and underlying what is the performance of the government. What in India, we are a large country, we do not believe that government has to do everything, and we believe that the role of the citizen is also very primal in the policy making and in ensuring that all services are running good. So citizens and journalists, once they know that something in the public domain and something is not working properly, it is their responsibility to point out where the lackings are and bring it up to the notice of the government so that the government can act upon it. So it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So there is a lot of data that is available there, and there is a multitude of small startup and large firms in India who are then working on this public data, including Indian School of Business. We have a public data portal called India Data Portal, which puts a lot of data related to rural development and agriculture and a lot of the data which is in public domain in one place, and which is helping journalists and citizens access this data in one place so that they can see a one view of the data and find an easy way to monitor things in real time and see what is happening in the economy. So that is the primary objective that is there. And what we believe is that if these things are there in the is transparent and public domain, it will over time help officers to address their stuff better. So that was the first part on evidence and data. Before I go into public big data and artificial intelligence, I wanted to just stop for a few minutes and get your feedback on this and any questions, if any.
Sir, I
Yes.
have a small question. Sir, whenever we talk about data, the authenticity of data is always, the first thing which comes into mind. What are the various aspects which you looked into to ensure authenticity of data?
That's a very good question. So and often when you are getting data, you have to check the authenticity or the veracity of the data before you can take a hard decision on it. So I can tell you one example. The aspirational district dashboard, which I just showed you, where all these 5 pillars have been measured. The system is designed in such a way the districts self-report their data. They are self-reporting their own data, and journalists are writing about it. So if a journalist saw that in that month there were 10 COVID deaths that were reported, and they have heard about in the district, and they are reporting 0, then they can raise the flag because this data is there in the public domain. So we are putting the data in public domain so that people can raise the flag. That's one. But we are not completely relying on the crowdsourcing or the citizens. So what was done was that 2 independent agencies were also put responsible for carrying out survey on this data. So 2 agencies would actually go and carry out independent survey on the same data points. So that might not measure the exact parameter, but that will give you a sense about what you are doing. So say if I give you an example, say I ask what is your income, say you give me a very high number, and then I ask you what was your consumption in the month. How much food consumption did you have? How much did you spend on education? How much did you spend on healthcare? And we see that these 2 numbers are matching from a statistical perspective, then we sort of believe them. It's not like asking the same questions, but similar enough aspects, because from a survey, you cannot basically get exact data, what you will get from operational data. So those nuances also to be taken into consideration. But then again, so one is the income data that no one wants to talk about. I might not tell how much I get as a salary, but I might be very happy to tell how much I spend on education every month and how much I spend on healthcare every month. That will give you a good indication. So basically asking these various sets of questions that will basically help in cross-checking the same data points or broadly the same data points that are there. So that is a practice I think that should be done. when you're collecting data, get it validated by at least three sources, because we as academics, we ensure that at least 2 to 3 sources, we just ask very different questions, but you try to get to the broadly same different things. So once that veracity is verified, then we can tell, okay, now this is in the correct range. But if there is already a doubt there, then we go back to the people and tell them, okay, this data is telling that you are sort of earning $100 per month, but your expenditure shows that you are earning, say, maybe $1,000 per month. So how is it possible? So just have a discussion there. So those are some of the techniques. These are all established techniques in the statistics and research community. Just that applying them is a new bit. Good question. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Any other queries from anyone? Sylvia, I see only 3 cameras on, so sorry. I'm just taking your name. You don't have to ask a question if you don't have any.
Okay. No, thank you. And I just would like to share with you that in Brazil we have a lot of data in our disposable for anyone. But I think the one of the issue or the difficult, it's how to work with a lot of data. That's the one important point. How people can understand all this data and work and can identify any corruption or any bad use of the money with this data. So it's a challenge for the private and public service and also the society to how to work with this data. So I don't know if you have some points.
So there are established methods and techniques to work with all sort of data and huge like people like us who have worked for data all our life. We really get excited when we see large volumes of data. Like small volumes of data, oh, okay, it's just too boring. Once we see more data, we get more excited because the possibilities of finding out more of insights are much higher, and you can come up with more interesting patterns and stuff. But again, I completely agree. You possibly need a few data scientists in your team who can help you navigate to the data, because that is often not a straightforward skill set. At least working with the Indian government that I found, I work very closely with the Department of Statistics in India. They are statisticians, and that's a very different skill set from, say, data scientists. So data scientists are required to fill up those jobs who can possibly, say, make sense of a few terabytes of transaction data and how to correlate things. So a lot of work is also done using, say, mobile phone data. So when the COVID took place in India, a lot of mobile phone data was used to track the migration of people within the country. Satellite data is also used. Currently, there's a lot of mobility data that has been shared by these companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, and other things. And currently, we internally are working on some projects where we are trying to take this mobility data, take night light data. So if you see a particular area and you see that there is more economic activity, that means there will be more night lights when you see from the satellite, and you can correlate some of those things. But again, these are things which takes time to basically take the raw satellite imagery and then work with them. But if there are any specific help that you need, you can reach out to Sandeep and the team, and then we can work with you on those aspects.
Okay, thank you. But that's the point. It's very specific, and we need a professional sometimes to understand everything. So sometimes for the society, it's not so easy to.
Yes.
But
sure.
we need.
So there are different groups.
The big organizations, yes, the groups and the big organization that fight against corruption, they are more specialized too, and they have the how can you say, sorry, the specialist of the data. It's not the statistical one. Yeah.
data scientist. Yeah.
So yeah, this is I think it's maybe a challenge to be more clear for the society, for the anyone to see the data and understand and can identify what is some problems. Thank you.
Sure. Sure. So let me continue my share, and then we can take more questions. So going back to this, so big data and artificial intelligence. So that's the next area and few use cases that I wanted to show there. And this is always a journey. So that I will tell you, like you should always start with small data points, try collecting data, form some simple insights that I showed you before you go into big data. It might be a bit too much to bite if you start with big data, because you might, it's more complex than what I showed till now. What I showed till now is very straightforward to implement, but what is going forward, the use cases might look more fascinating, but it also requires more amount of skill set, and you possibly need a few data engineers to work with you to make sense of it. The first is big data. What is big data? So every moment, huge amounts of data has been generated. So this can be from web transactions on Twitter, Facebook, on Google, whatever you are doing. There can be sensors which are writing data to certain things. There can be mobile phone data. There is video data from CCTV cameras across the city, and you are all in security or surveillance area. So CCTV cameras, the closed circuit TV cameras that are there across the city, capture a lot of videos across the day. What can you do with those camera feeds is a very interesting thing, and there are lots and lots of use cases of that. There are speech data, there are social media data. Then the types of this data are very varied. Like CCTV cameras will give you videos and images. Social media will give you text data. Then the number of likes, number of comments will give you some sort of structured data. The speed of generation of this data is also huge. So this is also one challenge that you have to deal with. And often there is data coming from multiple sources. So how can you trust that data? So the trustworthiness and unclean data. So these are the 4 V's of big data that are there. So, before I go on to the corruption use cases, I just want to talk to you about one use case, which is a quite nice way to demonstrate the power of big data. So this is an avalanche that took place, one of the worst avalanche that took place in India in a state called Uttarakhand in 2013. So on one night, there was a huge avalanche, and after that, a lot of people were actually stranded on that place, and no one could come or no one could go out, or the normal modes of transport were all stopped. And there were a lot of rescue people who were started with the rescue activities there. There were a lot of groups, both police, military group, paramilitary group, which were doing the rescue activity. But one question that everyone wanted to know was that how many people are trapped inside in that city, either dead or alive, and how many have we rescued till now. And this was something that this was a zone where you couldn't go anymore because it was already not reachable, not accessible, and a lot of people were under debris, as you can see from the image. How can you do that? So there was no way that everyone who was entering that city actually registered on some log and made an entry. So you knew, okay, there were 1,000 people who were inside the city today, and we have rescued 500 out of them. So another 500 are left. So no sort of simple method was available to measure how many people were there. So what the district administration and the state administration did was that they reached out to all the mobile phone operators. And every moment your mobile is lying just beside your mobile phone, every second it's actually contacts the base tower. The base tower, it contacts every second, even if there is no call coming over there. So it needs to know what is the location of your mobile phone, so that if a call comes to you, it can redirect the call or to that location. So every moment your mobile phone company knows the location of your phone. So all the mobile phones that were there in that area 24 hours before that incident happened were taken together as the master list of people. And then these mobile phones were tracked for the next 2 weeks to see what is the location of the mobile phone 2 weeks later. And once they became active, have they gone out of the danger zone or not? So this is what in some cases the mobile phones got active outside the zone of the avalanche in 2 days. Sometimes it became active in say 5 days. So often people would go get rescued in say 2 or 5 days time. They would go back to their hometown, which might take them another 2 days, and after that they will get a chance to charge their mobile phone and then get connected. So you can see this was something that say big data or say the indirect way to measure something. So often when we have to measure something, we always think about that's how human minds are trained, is to think about a direct way to measure things. When you are looking into things of corruption and measuring things, direct ways are often not available. So you have to look for indirect ways by which you can get some signal or evidence that with which you can correlate. And there has to be an aspect of innovation that can come in. For a particular use case, I might tell you something, but for a new use case that you're talking about, we have to sit together with a team, or you have to sit together with your team. You have to brainstorm and then come up with you. So what was the end result was that by tracking for about next 2 weeks, they were able to find a lot of the people who have actually reached back to their home location. So that is the power that big data gives you. If you collect a lot of this data, this sort of data, they can give you a lot of insights. So mobile phone data is used a lot for tracking the traffic across the city, across any time of the day. How is the traffic moving across any part of the city? When there was lockdown during COVID in India, and people were moving from one part from India to the other, this sort of data was used to understand how the migrant population, when people who have come out for a job in some part of India and now they're returning back to their home location, how the migrant population is moving across the country. So these are some of the things that were very helpful. You can look at a lot of indirect data, like say scanner data. So scanner data is like the data that you through which say a particular item is available or scanned through. You can look at say the overall financial transaction data to get a sense of how much financial transactions. So you look at total number of say financial transactions, mobile to mobile financial payment transaction across particular times of the week versus days of the week and months. You will see there is a different trends that you will find there, and you can then relate these trends with lot of activities that you are looking into. So there are a lot of things that you can play around with such sort of data, look into trends and find out interesting patterns that are there. So moving from this big data thing, I will move to artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence basically is a system that behaves and provides like a human and tries to provide human intelligence. So that is what an artificial intelligence system talks about: identify, represent, process, and deliver. When we talk about an artificial intelligence system from say this abstract definition that you see now to something more concrete, you can look into the AI technologies particularly. And what I want you to focus on here is that the sense part. We human sense, we comprehend, and the sense part comes, say we are seeing something, and can that seeing part be done by a machine instead of doing by us? And that is where computer vision comes to us. You have to listen to a audio processing and you can do something there. So say you are getting live camera feed from a stadium where a lot of people have gathered, or from a railway station or a underground metro station. You are getting live video feeds from there, and there are some people in your watch list or suspect list that you want to capture them. So how can computer vision help? If a person is looking into these pictures continuously, the person will possibly get bored. And there's an aspect of fatigue that might come in, by which he or she might take wrong decisions while looking into these things. But if you're looking into, if our computer is looking into these things, then the computer doesn't get bored. It just looks and accurately identifies the people with precision and accuracy every time. If you have to do the chatbot or some sort of decision making or chatting, this sort of systems can help. And there are a lot of illustrative solutions that you can look into, like say identity analytics, robotics, speech analytics, recommendation, and a range of other things that you can see here. So moving from there, from AI technologies, how are AI technologies being used? So I will talk through a few use cases in this lecture. So this is about property tax collection by civic bodies. Very interesting. Every civic body had to collect property tax, and this was a use case that was done in the Economic Survey of India in 2017 and 18, and you can find the reference at the bottom. So in a city, how many houses should be paying property tax? Is what, and is the civic authorities doing proper collection of property tax? So that was the question that they wanted to answer. So first they had to get a sense of how many houses that are there, and first step that was done was that they took satellite images, as you can see, of two cities in India. This was a pilot that was done for Bangalore and Jaipur, and based on the satellite images, they could estimate how many houses should be there that should pay property tax. And they got it to a level of neighborhood, locality, and very sub-locality to a level of a street. So every street, so in a particular street ABC, they can tell, okay, this has 50 houses. And they know from the actual property tax collection how many houses in street number ABC have paid property tax. So you can see if there are citizens who are trying to evade tax, they can be captured, or there are officials who have not gone and done survey of these houses properly. They can basically use a tool of this nature and identify that in ABC road, there are 50 houses that should be paying property tax, and they have complete houses, but only 10 are paying property tax there. I need to go and collect property tax or reach out to another 40 in that locality. So that is the level in which you can get insight and you can use it. Again, this is a type of use case which will require deep processing. You have to take satellite imagery, you have to do processing of this nature. You have to then correlate with some of the state departments to understand that. And that's actually the type of work that we at ISB are involved in. We are working with several states in India to come up with use cases of this nature. So we are working with a state called Himachal Pradesh, we are working with Jharkhand, we are working with Andhra Pradesh to basically work with multiple different data sets, looking at mobility data, as I was telling you, like say Google mobility data, Facebook mobility data, Apple mobility data, combining them with daylight satellite imagery that gives a sense of the area and the build-up area. You can identify whether something is an empty space or a build-up area. From the intensity of the light in the night, you can estimate very well whether it's a commercial business, because commercial businesses will have more lighting because they need to advertise their shop or something of that nature. And that can also be used for tax collection. So GST or a VAT tax that is there in some countries, for GST collection, if someone is doing fraud, you can identify some of those things. So this opens up a lot of possibility on how you can use data from satellite imagery for doing a lot of interesting use cases. Moving from the civic bodies to healthcare officials, in stunting, wasting, and underweight, the measures of malnutrition India is badly hit by malnutrition, and we continue to be that in that problem for the last 30 years. And one of the major aspect is that you need to identify which of the kids below 5 years old are not properly fed or nutritionally weak, and they have to be given adequate diet. For this, the nurse or the Anganwadi worker, as we call them, not really a nurse, is like a child care center. In the child care center, these nurses are supposed to take the height, weight, and head circumference of the child. Now, the child, as you can see, often stays with the legs bended, and they have a lot of work to do, and they are overloaded in their activities. So what they do in most of the cases is that they just look at the kid, take an estimate, and just write an average weight, height, and head circumference, where they should be recording all this. Possibly recording will take them 2 to 3 minutes. Instead, they just make up some weight just by looking at the child and write that. So they are not doing their work properly. They are cutting corners, these people. So, but we also understand when this pilot was done by this company, Wadwani AI, that these people are really overworked. So what they came up with a solution, a 5-second video, 3D video of the child was taken, only a 5-second video. And based on that 5-second video, the height, weight, and head circumference of the child is estimated using artificial intelligence. And this record is directly written into the system. So this is the type of system that India is trying to develop, and that not only helps in increasing productivity, but also makes life easy for people. A big challenge with AI, often when you see, is that people fear it because they feel that it will replace them. It is not replacing them. It is actually augmenting their ability to do their work better. So this is some of the things, and there are about 3-4 states in northern India where this solution is now running into statewide pilot by Wadwani AI. This has been taken up by the Ministry of Health also. So huge amount of success what is happening. Again, a complete application of artificial intelligence in the healthcare domain. Going from health, again, I have like 10s on 15s of examples which I teach. So I teach a whole course on how emerging technology can help in the public sector, which is like a 20-hour course that I teach. So I'm just taking one examples from most of the sectors just to give you a flavor of it in about 1 hour's time. Food quality, agriculture is a very important aspect in India, and when the crops go to the marketing board where their prices are determined, often their quality is evaluated by a person mostly on judgment basis without any fixed framework. So this company AgNext has come up with solutions where they take pictures of the crops and the produce, and based on historic pictures they do a grading of the crops, and they give a proper report for this grading. Again, this is an application of artificial intelligence where computer vision methods are being used to measure the quality of the produce and the agriculture things. So again, the person who is there on the agriculture and marketing board cannot take bribe from another farmer and tell, no, this is a good quality crop, and pass it. With a system of this nature, what will happen is that such crops, there will be actually a quantitative measure to quality. Quality is currently seen as a very qualitative one. This can become very quantitative by the use of AI-based techniques, and the farmer will actually gain in the process. So this is again been piloted very interestingly, given this is a private company, a startup. They're actually piloting this in several states in India and also in several places in Africa and Europe where they're piloting this product. So this has a global reach where they can be used. This is one use case that I want to talk to you about, road quality mapping and assessment using drones and artificial intelligence. So this is a system that has been implemented in the state of Andhra Pradesh with the following ministries that have been mentioned. So how is road quality mapping and assessment done, and how emerging technology is playing an important role there? So when we talk about monitoring road quality, we think about land surveyors going onto land. They're doing topographic surveys, they're creating reports, and then there are paper reports. And because of this long process, the quality of the road is monitored and measured maybe once in 5 years or 10 years. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we see, because the process that has been used to measure the quality of road is very lengthy and is not very easy to consume. What are the challenges it brings in? There can be actual measurement errors. The officers can often misreport facts because they might want to hide a few contractors who have done the repair work in the last 5 or 10 years, and they have got some kickbacks from those contractors who have maintained the road, and they will go and tell actually the road quality is very good. Whatever is the report that they are producing is very difficult to verify in real time, because you will have to again go and report and do the same thing there. Misreporting on damaged road, and these are all paper reports with hand drawn maps that are done. So it's also very they easily get damaged, and they are very easily, they can be also be forged, such things. So that is the challenge that is there from the government officials end. From the contractors, who have the role of maintaining and either making of new roads or maintaining the roads, the challenges that they face is that they would put in false repair cost. If something requires $100 to be to repair, they will tell it is $1,000 that are required. The required cost often are not in sync with the road condition. The road might only be in a little bit bad condition, but they will tell it is in a very, 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 very bad condition and is completely dilapidated, and we need a lot of money. So because their only objective is to sort of fool the people and get more money, the cost estimate and the materials that they are talking about is also not aligned, and there are challenges of kickbacks and bribes that also brings in. So what was the innovation that came in here? So drone-based surveillance was again done by this company called Curl Analytics, and if you can see in all of these examples, I have mentioned the company because in India, the government works a lot with the private players. The private players actually come in and innovate some of those things, and government is more of a facilitator and a user of these technologies, where private sector comes and actually develops it for them. So this comes in with the edge computing, a drone that comes in with the edge computing and high definition camera and a light detection and a LiDAR. Now, just to give you a 2-minute intro to drones, if you have not heard about it before. So a drone in itself is just a flying object. Now, depending on the type of data you want to capture from this flying object, you need to mount in that sort of equipment or sensors to it. If you want to take pictures from a drone, you need to mount a camera to it. So as you can see, taking the road quality, monitoring the road quality requires taking picture. For that, a camera is mounted, which takes a 2-dimensional video of the road and classifies the road. A LiDAR or a radar-based system is used. What is a radar-based system? A radar-based system actually helps you in measuring the depth of a road. Why is the depth of the road required? Because if certain part of the road is not proper, or it is if there is a pothole or there is a damage there, we want to measure the depth of that pothole, and that depth cannot be measured by a 2-dimensional camera or a video. So these are limitations of the technology. For that, a radar sort of object is required to measure this thing, and that will actually tell you what is the depth of that pothole, and through which you can also estimate if the depth of the pothole is say x cubic meter or cubic centimeter. You can estimate what is the amount of material, concrete material that is required to fill it up. And a geospatial navigation system is required, the third component, to ensure that the data that you are capturing, what is the location for which the data has been captured. So these are the three elements that are captured. So the initial test runs were done of the system, and people were very happy to see it there. And then what is the process flow that happens there? So we have three types of sensors on board: the camera, the lidar, and the GPS system. The edge computing takes place. What it does is that it tells you the quality of the road. That's the first thing it tells you. It tells you the dimensions and the depth of the pothole, and from the same thing, depending on the type of repair the road need to have, it also estimates the material required and the cost for repair. So these two elements also come out of the same artificial intelligence model. You saw the real-time dashboard which I showed you with the person of a face. The same real-time dashboard, the data goes into a dashboard. So a drone is flying, it is estimated something. This data doesn't go to some officer through his email. The data goes directly onto a public website where citizens can see what is the quality of the road. So you can understand the level of transparency that the state government is trying to bring in. A drone flies over it, it estimates something, this data is going on the public domain. So public can see what is there. If the contractor has not done the work properly, the public and the journalists are there to catch hold of them along with the government. Policymakers can use this information, and then it's a more of feedback loop that comes in. This is how the data capture takes place, like how a picture is taken, the original picture of the road. With the GPS system in place, what you can do is that you can mark the entire road on which the drone has flown, and it will mark the area on which the drone has flown. So this is the road that is marked. This is more of the artificial intelligence part. So we have the raw image. So you have a deep learning based segmentation and then outlining what is the part of the road versus what is not road. So this is more of a technical part that has been taken care of the algorithm. Then this is a very important thing that you need to see. The algorithm, this is actually a real output from the system. It is giving a system where for this stage of the road, the system is giving the probability for four things. Good road, very small probability. Average road with almost 99.9% probability of average road, or a mud road, or a bad road. It is telling it almost with 99% probability this is an average road, as you can see the values on the top right. And it also tells that this road doesn't have any lane marking. So this is also it tells you, which is also a very important aspect that has been captured. When this data is captured for the entire stretch of the road, this is the format in which the report is there. This is not Google Maps as you see it. This is basically the condition of the road as is shown by the four legend. What is the good road? What is the average road? What is the mud road? What is the bad road? So this is the four parts that has been shown here, and this comes in a real-time system, as I was telling you, and any officer can basically click on this and go a bit deeper and understand what is happening there. So this is how an interactive system it is. You can actually have this interactive report. You can zoom in into an area and you can actually go and see the actual image based on which decision has been taken. So, and once the road is in a bad condition, you can just fly the drone again and monitor what the improvement has been there. And based on that, you can see in real time monitoring the system and seeing what the improvement and the output has been. These numbers that you see are the latitude and longitude for the starting point and the ending point, just to tell you what the range of the road is. What is the benefits of the manual system over the drone-based system? You can see the first system can only do about 5 to 15 kilometers per day. The drone and the AI-based system can do about 15 kilometers per hour. The one cost, there are cost aspect which the drone mesh system is new, but as competition increases, this cost will come down. It is highly scalable. It can do about 30,000 kilometers per month. And if you put in more drones into action, it can do much more over time. So that was a section that I wanted to talk to you about big data and AI. Let me stop for a moment and take some questions from you. I think there are quite a few of you who have not switched on your cameras or asked any question. It will be good to hear from you. Whether you can relate to this sort of thing, whether you can relate to anything in your country, because the Indian perspective I know, because I work with a lot of states, I have some understanding. From other perspective, from the Brazil, Russia, China, or South Africa, it would be nice to understand what are the perspectives that are there, whether you are doing something similar, how are you aligned, and those experiences would be really helpful if you can share some thoughts.
Thank you very much. I'm a bit distracted because there's an emergency in the office right now. But there is a lot of work to be done from our side, and what I have we're not there yet. We are a bit far from there. But I think in terms of agriculture, the policymakers in agriculture have embraced technology. They're using the drones and but other policy makers, even your IT policymakers, I don't think they're using much, like your data analyst, which I think it's very important right now. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done from my country. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I also want to highlight. So this is an international forum. So I am also part of UN Big Data group. So UN has a group on big data, the United Nations. So their main mandate is to help countries get on the big data journey for nations. So if nation states need help, so they can reach out to them. You can just Google UN Big Data Group, and I think when if you write to them through your national representatives, I assume all of your government officers, so you can write through your government, and you can. So we have representative from India there, so you can always reach out to us. We'll be happy to help because we are doing work on a lot of these aspects in India. But again, in India also, our whole spectrum is huge because we have a large number of states, more than 30 states in India. I am showing you the examples of some states which are on the forefront of adopting technologies, but there are some others who have not even heard about these things. So the broad spectrum that exists in India also, that is there. So we are not all at the same level. Any experiences from Russia or China? I think it's very late night in China. So I'll just continue then. So the last one I wanted to talk to you about is blockchain, and particularly a few public use cases. So what is the blockchain? It's basically a database where you're storing data, records, but not in a single place, but on a ledger which is distributed in nature. So there are multiple copies of the same data that is there stored in multiple places. So our data is divided into multiple aspects and stored across different computers so that it becomes difficult or sort of impossible to fudge or make fraud of that data. It is very transparent because it is distributed across multiple places. So all these things don't come together to give a single version of the truth. They are secure because they cannot be hacked, and they are encrypted, and they are immutable there. So how does the blockchain work? So say someone requests a transaction, it goes to a peer-to-peer network, which is then validated, verified. So if you are a verified person, only then you will be able to access that data. As you will see there, any unauthorized person cannot access that particular data, and you will have a particular person identifier, and if you go with that person identifier, only then can you access it. And then the very fact that you have accessed this data, that also gets written onto that blockchain. And it's not that you can just go and have a peek at the data and then escape out and no one knows about it. I think that is not possible. So everyone comes to know if you have access to data point, and all this access of the data, whoever is accessing the data or changing the data is there. So no one can basically fudge that aspect of it. There are smart contracts, basically a part that works, basically a digital contract between two parties. That is how the blockchain works. And these are the things that are agreement that automates and fulfills, that helps people exchange money, property, share, or anything else. And regulators use blockchain to keep track on contracts and a part of the blockchain aspect. How does blockchain help? It raises the level of transparency. It helps to secure critical data from tampering, so no one can tamper the data. Increases the efficiency, and there is more trust and accountability in the system that we are talking about here. So everyone has a trust in the system because it cannot be fudged, so more people can trust it. There's a large number of use cases or pilots, I should say, of blockchain in India, as you can see. The top few use cases are mostly about land registry, because land registry or land records is a very difficult aspect, where say if someone has bought this particular land 30 years back, that record is possibly in an office which got destroyed in a flood or got corroded over time. So no one has record of that data point. But if you put all this data on a blockchain, then no one can fudge with it anymore. So farm insurance and digital certificates. So I'll walk you through some of these. You can see some of the states which have already gone on and created some use cases using that. So I start with the land tiling example. Land tiling is basically land records. So National Registry of Records. Again, I'm taking a US example here to start with, because they have an operational system in place, whereas I think some of the systems that we are talking about in India are still in the proof of concept and pilot stage. So the challenges in the land registration is that the papers can be forged by anyone. There are human errors. If there is a paper, there is a wear and tear that can happen, and then the aspect of traceability. Where was the original document? The original document is lost, and I have a version which I claim as original, and then 5 other people might also have some version of the document, and everyone claims that their document is the most original one. So how do we resolve this crisis? There can be only one version of the truth, but often in such cases there are multiple versions of the truth. How to deal with that? So that becomes the challenge. Land registries on the blockchain. So what happens? The citizen initiates a request. There's a service hall. There's a centralized database, which was that was the traditional system that would store the paper cartridge. But now the new system that talks about is fixing the whole thing on a blockchain, and electronic certificates are being provided. So 300,000 land titles have been registered. the sale process takes only a few minutes rather than days to complete the whole transaction, and the operational cost have also reduced hugely. That's also one aspect that we see coming out of it. In India, Indian School of Business actually is trying to develop the blockchain for land records with the government of Andhra Pradesh. So there is a Hyderabad blockchain lab which is in Indian School of Business that has been set up, which is trying to do that. But then this was something that Indian School of Business started in the end of 2019, and then in the beginning of 2020, the COVID started, and then initiatives of this nature, which are more R&D types and pilot types, this has basically stopped for some time till the COVID goes through, because the government officials are all busy firefighting for a long time. There's also pilots of similar nature in Maharashtra, as you can see. That you can see here. So, and the next one is the blockchain of education certificates. These are trials and initial implementation that are going on in India in a couple of universities that we see. What are the challenges in education certificate? Identity misrepresentation. You can create a fake certificate that you can submit in some place. Is a very common thing. I have got 40. I want to show my marks as 80. I create a false certificate and I submit that. And wherever I'm submitting, they have no way to verify it. Identity misrepresentation and document tampering is a big problem there. So what is the proposed solution here? The proposed solution is that the university issues a digital certificate, which then goes onto the blockchain, as you can see there. It also issues a digital certificate on the blockchain, which is there with the student. Student can allow or revoke access to the blockchain, and this is a two-way thing. So they can get access or revoke access. And when the student shares the digital certificate with the employer or a university, only then they can verify the certificates by interacting with the blockchain. So the certificates are secure, the data on the certificate are secured, the student has complete control of that, but the student cannot change anything. The student can only give a hash or a barcode to the organization, and based on that, on the barcode, the organization will actually verify the certificate. Advantages of the system: the data is private, there is no way to tamper, there is automated verification, there is permanent of the certificate, so it remains on the block forever. Any change that is there is all recorded. It can never be forgotten when it's there on the blockchain. The blockchain in the pharmaceutical and the drug supply chain industry. So what happens is that say a drug manufacturer manufactures a drug, but by the time the drug reaches the patient, someone has changed it with a fake medicine. So that's the challenge that we are trying to deal with. So this is a pilot that Niti Aayog has embarked upon. Such initiatives have been piloted also in Germany and US, and they are in the initial phase of implementation. These are the challenges: counterfeit drugs in the supply chain. There's a lack of visibility or adherence or or precautions that are there, and what can be done. No way to check such things. So the way it works is that the manufacturer, where every drug is marked with a unique code and the data is stored on a blockchain. When the manufacturer sends the drug to the wholesaler, the wholesaler receives the drug and it is verified. And so the very aspect that the wholesaler has received the drug and received that lot is marked. The pharmacist verifies the drug, and that is also added to the blockchain. And then the patient can see this complete interaction on the chain, and then the interaction that this particular patient took this drug is also added to the blockchain. We can ensure end-to-end traceability of the pharmaceutical drugs here, and the transparency to enhance accountability and prevent drug repackaging and things of that nature. There are lots of other areas where you can use blockchain, like in supply chain, government, in energy. A new concept that is coming up is peer-to-peer network, peer-to-peer energy transmission. That is very important, and blockchain can help there. In the food supply chain, it is there. In retail, ensuring that you have the correct product. In healthcare, it is used, and in education, we have already talked about it. So that basically brings an end to the blockchain aspect, and I just wanted to highlight on some of the key takeaways that I want you to take away, because I understand that this might be new concepts for many of you who are getting exposed to these things for the first time, be it big data, data science, artificial intelligence, and it can be difficult to remember. But the underlying concepts, these are technologies, and you can always find someone or some vendor or academic who can recommend you on these technologies. I think your eye and focus should be on these main aspects. What you want to do, improve transparency. If you can, your aim is to improve transparency, you can get a solution for that. So that should be what you can do to remove corruption, improve the transparency in the process, enable more aspects of your day-to-day operation digitally focused. So if things are on a digital transactions, it is very easy to be monitored over there. So if what you are doing is digitally recorded, it can be monitored, it can be tracked, and there are lesser chance that fraud or corruption will happen there. So if you can enable more digital transactions, that's the way forward. Put more records in public domain. It's not only digital transactions. If you can remove out the confidential and private data, and you have to be conscious about private data, because it might be an officer doing a day-to-day work, it might be a citizen's data or something else. So you will have to take into consideration privacy, and putting privacy into consideration. If you can put the records in public domain, that helps. Instead of maybe a couple of people seeing it, it helps maybe a dozen of eyes looking at the data, or maybe a score, or maybe hundreds of eyes actually looking at the same data points, and that actually helps you reduce or manage corruption to large extent. Data can be accessed by journalists and citizens, because then they can raise the questions if some discrepancy is raised, as was mentioned by Kanwalpreet in the beginning of the lecture. Like, how can we raise questions and ensure? So people have to ask questions. If you feel that some data is not correct, you have to ask that question. Journalists are there in every economy. Media is there in every country to ask the right questions. Citizens, there are citizens platforms. Citizens have to raise their voices and ask the question. If you think that your civic body, your district or locality, or someone who is not doing the job proper, if you remain silent, if you're a journalist and media person remain silent, it's not going to solve the problem. They have to raise the voice, and government can ensure they do a lot of these to put that. And a very important aspect, validate data through auxiliary data sources. That's a very, very important aspect. You might have data coming from one source, but till a point you validate the data through multiple sources, you really don't know whether what you are reporting is correct or not. So validating data through multiple sources or auxiliary sources is also a very important way forward. So I think with that, I come to end to my talk, and thanks for your attention today. I understand it is odd time for many of you, and thanks for accommodating that, and hopefully we can work together in the future and work on some of these use cases and take them from idea to implementation. Thank you very much.